I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day: why should every man watch Only the Brave? Well, surprise, surprise, over the weekend I finally got around to seeing the film Only the Brave. This is a movie that I've been wanting to watch for a while. I finally did it over the weekend and man, am I glad that I did. This movie is a welcome breath of fresh air. When you compare this to all of the other schlock that we've been served up of late in cinema, this film is just awesome. It is a story that is well told, it's got meaningful characters, it's well acted, and it's about stuff that really matters in life. This is such a good film. In fact, this film is so good that as soon as I'd finished watching it, I went and bought a digital copy and added it to my personal movie library. Now that happens very rarely these days because there's so much that's produced that just isn't that good that I very rarely actually go to the steps of buying a movie now and adding it to my collection. But this movie, as soon as I was finished, I bought a copy. It's a really, really good film. This film was not what I was expecting. I had an idea in mind watching the trailer of what I thought I was going to get, but it's very different. It's based on a true story. It's about heroism, but I think most importantly of all, it avoids some of the sort of overly sentimental stuff that often is a hallmark of these types of movies. It avoids these sort of emotive cliches. This film is very real and it tells their stories and the stories of this event and these characters in a very meaningful kind of way. And it's a film that just draws you in. The grief scenes in this movie are some of the best acting of grief that I've ever seen. And part of that is because the story is so well told and the characters are so well written that you really feel the sense of sadness and loss whenever grief is part of the story. But more importantly, the acting of grief is just so real. And you really, there's one scene in particular where Jeff Bridges does something. It's very simple what he does, but man, it's just so raw. You feel, it just feels very real. It's palpable. You can really feel a sense of what it must have been like to be in that situation. Like I said, some of the best acting of grief that I've seen in a movie in a long time. The other thing too is that it actually lets you sit with the grief. It doesn't sort of quickly try and move away. A lot of these types of films, they sort of have moments of sadness, but then they go, hey, quick, look over here. You know, that's sad, but quickly, let's not focus too long on that. Let's look at something else over here instead that's really nice and positive and happy. This film actually takes its time with the grief and it lets you sit with some of these difficulties. There's even an interesting sort of thing involving two of the main characters around the whole question of marriage and family and kids and what does this all mean. And they sort of really put you into the situation and the difficulties that they're facing. It doesn't gloss over it or present a very cliched and perfect view of these people and that it's sort of whitewashed of any of the sufferings and difficulties that they might have faced in their lives. The other thing that I think is so good about this movie and why it's such a welcome breath of fresh air is that it presents a profoundly important and good portrayal of everything that is great about masculinity. This is about men doing what I think men are called to do with the gift of their masculine strength, which is directed outwards in profoundly important acts of self-giving love. And here's the thing, it's not just about the heroics of them in their job. It's about the day-to-day heroics of men giving themselves to marriage and family life. Marriage and family life is so essential for men. And at a time in our history when we are undermining, I think, the importance of marriage and family life, and we're sort of treating it as like this optional extra, this thing that, oh yeah, that's nice if you choose to do it, but hey, what's the big deal if you don't? This film actually presents this profoundly important truth that marriage and family life isn't just about the individuals who choose to be married and have kids together. It's actually about how it shapes and changes them for the better. And in this case, the focus is on the men. Men are transformed by marriage in profoundly important ways. Men are transformed by fatherhood. It completely reshapes who they are in profoundly important ways in most of the cases where men become fathers. I remember for me holding my eldest daughter in my arms for the very first time just after she was born, and I was just weeping, and I knew that my life life had been forever changed in that moment. I'd never be the same. And with my other kids, my life has continued to be developed and matured. I have become a more responsible citizen. I've understood, more importantly, about what true love is actually all about and what it's required to actually give of yourself and be self-sacrificial for the sake of others. And that has made me a better person. And hopefully that is having a bearing on the wider community, not just in the life of myself and my kids or the life of me and my wife. And this film really grounds itself in that idea. It's not just about these men isolated from other sort of aspects of their lives. Instead, there's a sort of whole picture here. You get the sense that this heroic thing that they did is very much grounded in this life of virtue that they are striving to live in other areas of their lives. Like I said, for me, this is just such a welcome breath of fresh air because we're just so constantly bombarded now with talk about toxic masculinity and male privilege and misogyny, etc., 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 etc. Just this constant ongoing cycle in films and television and media commentary. It's just everywhere. But very rarely are we actually presented with the truth that there is a greatness that lies at the heart of masculinity, and when men give themselves to that and do good and virtuous things through acts of self-sacrificial love, when they give themselves to responsibility in life, even when that's difficult and it makes demands of them, they actually become better men and they do really good and important things. So many of the people who are sort of constantly going on about these issues forget that in actual fact the vast majority of men are not in the group that they're talking about, and there are a lot of men out there like these men portrayed in this film who are doing truly heroic and difficult things that keep them safe and that save them from extreme dangers, and if it wasn't for these men, they wouldn't be in a privileged position that they're in to be able to cry about all the oppression and horrible things that they think are happening to them at the hands of men. I'm not saying that there's not real issues out there involving men, but what I am saying is that if you don't actually promote a healthy vision of authentic masculinity, then don't be surprised if you find yourself extremely unhappy with the outcome of a society where men are not being encouraged and told that there is something good about masculinity and here's how you live it out well. Don't be surprised if you spend all of your time sort of belittling marriage and family life as some sort of patriarchal institution that holds women back, if all of a sudden men decide that they don't have to get married, they don't have to have family life, it's not the thing we do anymore, and then they don't grow and mature and become more self-giving and more virtuous as a result. And then you end up with a society of men who don't really know how to be virtuous and self-giving in the kind of way that you want them to be. This film, as I said, is such a welcome breath of fresh air because it really focuses in on everything that is great about masculinity, and it does it in a way that avoids a lot of the cliches. It does it in a way that is just well told and well acted. It's a great film. I highly recommend it. As per usual, I'd love to know your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. There's a link in the description below and a link on screen at the end of this video. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.